I spent years pretending the person who knew me best was only my friend, but the truth was that he had always been the one I was waiting for. My name is Ethan Parker, and for most of my life, Noah Bennett was the person who stood beside me through every season, every change, and every uncertain moment. We grew up in the same small town in Colorado, where everyone knew everyone and childhood friendships often became lifelong connections. To everyone around us, Noah and I were simply inseparable friends. They saw the alpha who was calm, dependable, and always ready to help, and they saw me as the quiet omega who preferred peaceful mornings, old books, and small conversations over crowded rooms. What they did not see was the invisible space between us, the feelings neither of us dared to name. Noah had always been different from the way people described alphas. He was not someone who needed to prove his strength. He showed it through patience, kindness, and the way he noticed things others ignored. He remembered that I liked my coffee with a little extra cream. He knew I hated being the center of attention. He could tell when I was worried even when I smiled and said everything was fine. Sometimes I wondered if he knew me better than I knew myself. But every time that thought appeared, I pushed it away. Someone like Noah belonged beside someone extraordinary. Someone confident, someone who matched his presence. I never believed that person could be me. Our friendship continued through the years, built on ordinary moments that somehow became unforgettable. We spent summer evenings walking through the neighborhood, talking about dreams we were not brave enough to chase yet. We celebrated birthdays together, supported each other during difficult days, and created memories that felt too special to describe. There were countless times when I wanted to tell him what he meant to me, but fear always stopped me. What if I changed everything? What if the friendship I treasured disappeared because I wanted something more? Noah never gave me a reason to doubt him, but my own insecurities created a wall I could not cross. Then came the camping trip that would change the way I saw him forever. It was supposed to be a simple weekend away with friends, a chance to escape the busy routines of everyday life and enjoy the quiet beauty of the mountains. We packed our bags, drove several hours from town, and arrived at a peaceful campsite surrounded by tall trees and open skies. I thought it would be just another memory added to the many we already shared. I did not know that the journey ahead would bring hidden feelings to the surface. I did not know that a storm was coming. And I certainly did not know that one night inside a small tent would make me question everything I believed about Noah, about myself, and about the possibility that the person standing beside me all these years might have been waiting for me too. The mountains had a way of making the world feel smaller, and that weekend, surrounded by endless trees and quiet skies, I began to notice the things I had spent years ignoring. The drive from our hometown in Colorado had been peaceful, filled with familiar conversations and comfortable silence. Noah sat beside me, one hand resting on the steering wheel, his eyes focused on the winding roads ahead. Every few minutes, he would glance over and ask if I was comfortable, if I needed a break, or if the music was too loud. It was such a small gesture, but that was always Noah. He cared in ways that never demanded attention. He simply noticed. Our group arrived at the campsite in the afternoon, carrying backpacks, sleeping bags, and enough supplies for a relaxing weekend away. The air was fresh, the forest was quiet, and the view from the campsite looked like something from a postcard. The mountains stretched across the horizon, and the golden sunlight reflected against the trees. Everyone was excited, but I found myself paying attention to something else. I kept noticing Noah, the way he helped set up the campsite without being asked, the way he made sure everyone had what they needed before thinking about himself, the way his expression softened whenever he looked in my direction. I told myself I was imagining things. Noah had always been kind. That was just who he was. But somewhere deep inside, I wondered if there was more. Behind those moments. As evening arrived, the temperature dropped, and we gathered around the campfire sharing stories and laughing about old memories. Someone brought up our childhood, and everyone started talking about how Noah and I had been together for as long as anyone could remember. They joked that we were practically family. I smiled, but a strange feeling settled in my chest. Family, friend. Those words were safe. They were comfortable, but they were also the reason I never allowed myself to hope for anything more. Later that night, As everyone prepared to sleep, the weather began to change. The peaceful sky that welcomed us earlier was slowly covered by dark clouds. The wind moved through the trees, and distant thunder echoed across the mountains. The forecast had predicted a chance of rain, but nobody expected the storm to arrive so quickly. We rushed to secure our belongings and make sure everything was protected. The campsite that had felt warm and inviting only hours before suddenly felt much quieter. Because of the unexpected weather, the group had to adjust their sleeping arrangements. The available space became limited, and Noah and I ended up sharing the largest tent. I tried to act normal, but my heart felt strangely nervous. It was not because I was uncomfortable with him. It was because being close to Noah reminded me of everything I tried not to admit. Inside that tent, with the sound of rain beginning outside and the storm surrounding the mountains, there was nowhere to hide from my own thoughts. For the first time in years, I was forced to sit with the feelings I had always pushed away. And beside me was the one person who had always made me feel safe, even when I was too afraid to understand why. The sound of rain against the tent became the only thing I could hear. Outside, the storm moved across the mountains, covering the campsite with a quiet rhythm that made everything feel distant. Inside the small tent, the world seemed different. There were no friends around, no distractions, and no easy way to avoid the thoughts I had carried for years. Noah sat across from me, leaning against his sleeping bag, calm as always. Even in a moment that should have felt awkward, he somehow made everything feel safe. That was the thing about Noah. He never made me feel like I had to pretend. He never asked me to become someone else. He simply accepted me. We listened to the rain for a while before he finally spoke. "Do you remember the first time we met?" I smiled because I remembered it clearly. We were kids, standing at the same school playground after I had dropped my books everywhere. Everyone else had rushed past, but Noah stopped to help me pick them up. It was such a small moment, but somehow it became the beginning of everything. Over the years, Noah had been there through every important chapter of my life. When I was nervous about new challenges, he encouraged me. When I doubted myself, he reminded me of my strengths. When I felt like I did not belong, he was the person who made me feel seen. I had always thought those moments were proof of a wonderful friendship. That night, I started wondering if they meant something more. Noah looked toward the entrance of the tent where the rainwater moved along the ground outside. His expression changed slightly, like he was thinking about something he had kept hidden for a long time. "Ethan, do you ever feel like some things are difficult to say because you are afraid they might change everything?" His question surprised me. I looked at him and noticed something I had rarely seen before: uncertainty. Noah Bennett, the person everyone trusted and admired, was suddenly nervous about his own words. I told him that I understood. I knew exactly what it felt like to hold something inside because the risk of losing someone felt too painful. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. Felt honest. For the first time, we were not talking about everyday things or old memories. We were talking about the feelings hidden underneath all of them. Noah smiled softly and reminded me of moments I had forgotten. The time he stayed awake helping me prepare for an important exam. The time he drove across town during a snowstorm just to bring me medicine when I was sick. The way he always noticed when I needed support, even when I never asked. I realized he had been showing me how much I mattered for years. I was just too afraid to understand. The storm continued outside, but inside that tent, something between us began to change. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It was quieter than that. It was the feeling of two people finally becoming honest after years of silence. And as I watched Noah sitting there beside me, I wondered if maybe the connection I had been searching for was never somewhere far away. Maybe it had been right beside me all along. The storm outside grew stronger, but inside the tent, the silence between Noah and me felt different. It was no longer the silence of two friends who had run out of things to say. It was the silence of two people standing at the edge of a truth they had both been avoiding. I could feel my heartbeat becoming faster, not because I was afraid of Noah, but because I was afraid of what his words might mean. For years, I had convinced myself that wanting more would only ruin what we already had. Noah was my closest friend, the person I trusted most, and losing that connection felt impossible to imagine. But as the rain continued falling around us, I realized something important. Maybe the reason I was so afraid of losing him was because he had always been more than just a friend to me. Noah looked down for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The confident alpha everyone knew was still there, but now I could see the person underneath. Someone who also had doubts. Someone who also worried about being rejected. "Ethan," he said quietly, "there is something I have wanted to tell you for a long time." I stayed silent, giving him the space to continue. He told me that he remembered every moment when we were younger. He remembered the first time he noticed that I always helped others before thinking about myself. He remembered how I would smile even when I was having a difficult day because I did not want anyone to worry. He remembered all the small details that I thought nobody noticed. Then he said something that completely changed the way I looked at our past. He told me that he had not been standing beside me all these years because he felt responsible for me. He had been there because he wanted to be, because being around me made him happy. I did not know what to say. My mind went through every memory we shared, every conversation, every moment when Noah appeared exactly when I needed someone. Suddenly, those memories looked different. They were not just signs of friendship. They were signs of someone who cared deeply but had been waiting for the right moment. I asked him why he never said anything before. Noah looked toward the sound of the rain and admitted that he was afraid. He was afraid that if he told me the truth and I did not feel the same way, everything between us would disappear. He valued me too much to risk losing me. Hearing those words made me realize we had both been carrying the same fear. We both cared. We both stayed quiet. We both protected the friendship because it mattered so much. The storm outside was still covering the mountains, but the uncertainty between us was slowly disappearing. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that maybe I was not imagining the connection between us. Maybe the person who always made me feel safe was also the person who had been hoping I would choose him. Noah reached out and gently took my hand, a simple gesture that carried years of unspoken emotions. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the storm, not the distance we had created, and not the fears that had kept us silent. We were finally being honest with each other, and I knew that whatever happened next, this was the moment everything changed. For a moment, neither Noah nor I moved. The sound of the rain filled the small space around us, but everything inside the tent felt completely still. His hand was holding mine, not with pressure, but with a quiet kind of reassurance that told me I was safe. After years of wondering if I was the only one who felt something deeper, I finally had my answer. Noah had been carrying the same feelings I had hidden away. I looked at him and realized that the person I had always trusted most was also the person who understood me better than anyone else. I wanted to say something meaningful, something that could explain all the emotions I had carried for so long, but every word felt too small. So I simply told him the truth. I told him that I had been afraid too. I was afraid that wanting more would destroy the friendship that meant everything to me. I was afraid that I had misunderstood every kind gesture, every thoughtful moment, and every time he made me feel like I mattered. Noah smiled softly, and there was a sense of relief in his expression. It was as if both of us had finally put down a weight we had been carrying for years. He told me that he never wanted me to feel pressured or uncertain. He did not want our relationship to change because of one emotional moment. He wanted it to change because we both chose it. That was what made Noah different. He never treated my feelings like something he could simply take for granted. He respected them. He listened. He gave me the time I needed. Outside, the storm continued moving through the mountains, but the fear I had felt earlier was gone. The night that once felt overwhelming had become the night when everything finally became clear. We talked for hours about things we had never admitted before. We talked about the future, about the dreams we had kept private, and about how strange it was that two people who knew each other so well could still hide such an important part of themselves. Noah laughed and said he had spent years trying to find the perfect moment to tell me, only to realize there was never going to be a perfect moment. There was only the moment when we were honest. I laughed too because I understood exactly what he meant. Sometimes people wait for the right time because they are afraid of the outcome, but waiting too long can mean missing the chance to say what truly matters. As the night continued, the storm slowly began to fade. The heavy clouds moved away, and the sound of rain became softer. Noah looked at me with the same kindness I had known for years, but now I saw something more. I saw hope. I saw the beginning of something new. Then, in that quiet moment, Noah leaned closer and gently kissed me. It was not a sudden decision or a moment of confusion. It was the natural result of everything we had shared, every memory, every conversation, and every feeling we had protected for so long. When we pulled away, I felt a warmth I had never known before. The person I had spent years standing beside was finally standing with me in a completely new way. The storm had changed the world outside, but it had also changed something inside us. And as I looked at Noah, I knew this was not the end of our friendship. It was the beginning of something we had both secretly hoped for. The morning after everything changed felt both familiar and completely different. I woke up inside the same tent, surrounded by the same mountains, but the feeling in my heart was no longer the same. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind fresh air, quiet trees, and a peaceful sky that looked brighter than before. For years, I had wondered what it would feel like to stop hiding my feelings from Noah. Now that I finally knew the truth, I realized that happiness could also come with uncertainty. The moment we shared was beautiful, but it also opened the door to questions I had never allowed myself to ask. What would happen when we returned home? Would our friendship still feel the same? Would everything we built over the years become complicated because we crossed a line we could never go back from? Noah seemed to sense my thoughts before I said anything. That was always one of the things that amazed me about him. He noticed the smallest changes in my expression. While we packed our things and prepared to leave the campsite, he reminded me that nothing had to move faster than I was comfortable with. He told me that the most important thing was that we were honest with each other. Those words gave me a sense of peace because Noah was not trying to change our relationship overnight. He was not asking me to become someone different. He was simply choosing to walk beside me in a new way. When we returned to Colorado, everyday life slowly started again. The mountains became a beautiful memory, but reality brought new challenges. Before the trip, Noah had always been the person I could rely on without hesitation. After the trip, I found myself learning how to accept his affection without wondering if I deserved it. I had spent so much time believing that someone like Noah would eventually find someone better, someone more confident, someone who seemed more suited for him. But Noah kept reminding me that love was not about finding a perfect person. It was about choosing the person who made your life feel complete. We started taking small steps, coffee together before work, long conversations after busy days, simple moments that felt different because we were no longer pretending. Yet, a small fear remained inside me. I wondered if Noah loved me because of the emotions created during that unforgettable night or if he truly saw a future with me. I never wanted to be a temporary feeling connected to a special memory. I wanted to know that I mattered beyond the storm, beyond the tent, and beyond that single moment when everything changed. One evening, as we walked through our hometown park, I finally shared that fear with him. Noah stopped and looked at me with the same calm expression I had trusted for years. He told me that the storm did not create his feelings. It only gave him the courage to finally admit them. He said he had cared about me long before that night, during ordinary days when nothing exciting happened. That was when I understood something important. The most meaningful connections were not built during extraordinary moments. They were built through countless ordinary moments when someone chose to stay. And Noah had been choosing me for years. After that night in the mountains, Noah and I learned that starting a relationship was not about changing who we were. It was about discovering a new way to appreciate everything we already shared. The friendship that had been the foundation of our lives became something even stronger because we no longer had to hide the feelings that had quietly grown between us. Still, I realized that love was not proven by one unforgettable moment. It was proven through the choices people made every single day. Noah showed me that in the simplest ways. He remembered the details that mattered to me, not because he was trying to impress me, but because paying attention had always been part of who he was. He asked about my day, listened when I needed someone, and supported my dreams as if they were just as important as his own. Before Noah, I always believed love was something that happened to other people. I thought some people were simply meant to be chosen while others were meant to hope from a distance. But Noah slowly changed that belief. He showed me that I did not need to become someone else to deserve care and affection. I only needed to allow someone to see the person I already was. As months passed, our relationship became more natural. We continued our routines in Colorado, balancing work, family, and the small moments that made life meaningful. We visited the same places we had grown up around, but everything felt different because we experienced them together in a new way. The park where we used to talk as friends became the place where we planned our future. The coffee shop we visited after long days became a reminder of how ordinary moments could become precious memories. But the biggest change was inside me. I stopped waiting for something to go wrong. I stopped wondering when Noah would realize he deserved someone else. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that I was enough. Noah noticed that change before I did. One evening, while we were walking through the neighborhood where we grew up, he told me that he loved seeing me become more confident. He said that the person he admired most was not someone who never had doubts, but someone who continued moving forward despite them. His words stayed with me because they reminded me that love was not about being perfect. It was about being accepted. I also learned that Noah had his own fears. Everyone saw him as the strong alpha who always knew what to do, but I discovered that he also worried about making mistakes. He worried about disappointing the people he cared about. He worried that his feelings would not be enough. That realization brought us even closer because we were no longer trying to appear perfect for each other. We were simply two people choosing to be honest. The memory of the storm remained special, but it was no longer the only important moment in our story. Every day afterward became another reason to believe in us. The love that began with a confession continued through patience, trust, and countless small actions. And I finally understood that the greatest proof of love was not a single unforgettable night. It was someone choosing you again and again, even on the most ordinary days. Years passed quietly after the day we finally stopped hiding our feelings, and I began to understand that the most beautiful parts of life were often the ones we never planned. Noah and I continued building our future one simple day at a time, creating a home filled with comfort, laughter, and memories that felt more valuable than anything we could have imagined. Our relationship was no longer defined by uncertainty or fear. It was built on trust, patience, and the decision to keep choosing each other. The small town in Colorado that once held so many memories of our childhood became the place where we created new ones together. We moved into a cozy house near the mountains, not far from the places where we grew up. The view outside our windows reminded me of that weekend when everything changed. But now the mountains no longer represented uncertainty. They represented the beginning of something beautiful. Noah still had the same qualities that made me admire him years before. He was still thoughtful, still dependable, and still the person who noticed the smallest details. But now I also saw the softer side of him that he rarely showed to others. I saw the person who laughed when we cooked dinner together, the person who enjoyed quiet mornings with a cup of coffee, and the person who found happiness in ordinary moments. I realized that the alpha I loved was not someone who needed to be admired from a distance. He was someone who wanted to share every part of life with me. I also changed during those years. I became more confident, more open, and more willing to believe that I deserved happiness. I stopped seeing myself as someone who was simply lucky to be loved by Noah. Instead, I understood that our relationship worked because we both brought something important into each other's lives. We supported each other, challenged each other, and helped each other become better versions of ourselves. Sometimes we returned to the campsite where we spent that unforgettable weekend. We would walk along the same paths, look at the mountains, and remember the night when two friends finally admitted what had been in their hearts for years. The old tent was gone, replaced by a simple memory that stayed with us. We never forgot that a single moment could change everything, but we also knew that the real story was everything that came afterward. The everyday conversations, the shared meals, the quiet support during difficult days, the laughter that filled our home. Those were the moments that truly built our future. One evening, as we watched the sunset from our backyard, Noah took my hand and smiled. He told me that he used to think the most important moments in life were the ones people remembered forever. But now he believed the most important moments were the ones that happened every day when you were with the person who made life feel complete. I looked at the mountains in the distance and thought about how much had changed. A storm once brought us together, but it was everything after the storm that made us stay. Our love was no longer just a memory from one special night. It had become a lifetime of moments that reminded us we had found exactly where we belonged. Looking back now, I realized that the most important moments in my life were never the ones I expected. I once believed that love had to arrive in a dramatic way, with perfect timing and undeniable certainty. But the truth was much simpler. Sometimes love is the person who stays beside you through ordinary days, the person who remembers the smallest details, and the person who quietly chooses you again and again. Noah was that person for me long before I understood what he meant to my life. Before the confession, before the change between us, and before we finally allowed ourselves to be honest, he was already my safest place. Years later, when I stood outside our home in Colorado and watched the evening sky turn golden over the mountains, I thought about how different my life had become. I remembered the version of myself who was afraid to hope for more. I remembered the person who believed that someone like Noah could never truly choose someone like me. That person felt so far away now. I learned that love was not about finding someone who completed an incomplete person. It was about finding someone who walked beside you while you continued becoming yourself. Noah never tried to change me. He never asked me to be louder, braver, or different. He simply reminded me that the qualities I once considered weaknesses were the same things he admired most. My kindness, my patience, my ability to care about others. The years we spent together taught me that a strong relationship was not built only on unforgettable moments. It was built on everyday choices. It was the mornings when we drank coffee together before starting our day. It was the evenings when we talked about everything and nothing at the same time. It was the quiet moments when we sat together without needing words because we already understood each other. The mountains where our story changed remained special to us, but I no longer saw that night as the only important part of our journey. The storm was only the beginning. The real story was everything that came after. It was the trust we built, the dreams we shared, and the life we created together. One year after another, we continued growing. We faced challenges, celebrated achievements, and learned more about each other with every passing day. There were moments when life was difficult, but we always remembered that we were a team. We were not two people searching for perfection. We were two people choosing love even when things were not easy. Sometimes I think about the young version of myself who sat inside that tent, listening to the rain and wondering if the person beside me felt the same way. I wish I could tell him that the answer was already there. I wish I could tell him that the person he trusted most would become the person he loved most. Because the greatest love stories are not always about finding someone new. Sometimes they are about finally seeing the person who has been there all along. And when I look at Noah now, standing beside me beneath the same Colorado sky, I know that every uncertain moment, every hidden feeling, and every quiet hope led us exactly where we were meant to be. The storm passed, but what it brought into my life remained forever.